democracy over in the United States. Mr. Christian, good morning. Thanks for waking up early and thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Brother Daniel LeBron, and God bless you and your station and the wonderful Keith and Ken of St. Lucia. We love St. Lucia. I always tell people Dominicans and St. Lucians are perhaps the closest people in the Caribbean.
Thanks for coming on. Just slight clarification. There are quite many similarities, but there's a unique difference as well.
Yes, Dominicans say the and St. Lucians say the.
No, that as well. But my name is Shannon LeBon. You would have been initial contact with the co-producer, who is my father, Danny LeBon. So just a slight.
So you're Shannon.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Shannon. Nice to meet you again.
Yes. Mr. Gabriel, let's start off. You're in the United States. I know you're monitoring what's happening back home in Dominica. How concerned are you of the recent political developments?
I'm very, very concerned. First of all, let me just say this: I'm a returned Dominican. I returned with my family in 2003, but like so many Dominicans who've returned, we've had to leave our country, the country that we love, because Dominica is not the Dominica we knew; it's a dictatorship. And let me be very blunt about this. Roosevelt's carrot. And by the way, I'm not a member of the opposition. My affinity has always been with the Dominica Labour Party, which is no longer in power. The Dominican Labour Party, after the sudden death of Rosie Douglas and Pierre Charles, has been overthrown in a stealthy coup by a bunch of passport-peddling kleptocrats. And that's what we have in Dominica now. Since 2013, the current government, which is called that of a Dominica Labour Party, has not had a delegates conference. In 20 plus years, there's not been one debate with Roosevelt's carrot and any member of civil society and the opposition. He's refused to debate. The last debate was with the late, great Rosie Douglas, my political mentor. Many years ago, Shannon, at age 17, I was with a St. Lucian. His name was Mario Mitchell. We went to another Caribbean island because we were seeking independence from Britain. Mm-hmm. We sought independence from Britain because we believed we could do better than the British had done. Our people had fought colonialism and slavery. We had sought self-government. We sought to build a democratic state so that Dominicans, Kalinago, Black Dominicans, all Dominicans could live freely and enterprise and build lives within the parameters of rule of law, good governance, and democracy. We've lost our democracy. Dominica today is a more lawless nation, a more oppressed nation, a more dictatorial nation than it ever was in that period after World War II, when we in the British West Indies put on the clothing of self-government. Let me just give you an example of what I mean. Mm-hmm. St. Lucia is very dear to us. My father came to St. Lucia in 1943 as a soldier in the British Army. He was at VG Barracks. And so St. Lucia, when I say St. Lucia, I could as well be talking about Dominica. I worked very closely in the past with the agricultural scientist, Dr. Edsel Edmonds, who used to be our ambassador here. Mm-hmm. That's my friend. His son, Anton. Those are my friends. We've worked in development cause. So we're not political actors. We're not here to come and talk about the opposition and Labour Party. In fact, as I said, our affinity was for this government, but it's not a government that operates by rule of law. The first thing I need St. Lucians to know is that Roosevelt's carrot, early on, was very antagonistic to Roosevelt Douglas, who brought him into office, who brought him on. Roosevelt Douglas dies under pressure 8 months into his term. Pierre Charles, with whom I went on that mission with Mario Mitchell in 1978, we went to Havana, Cuba for a conference. He later became a very well-known politician in St. Lucia. Mm-hmm. He became prime minister. And within 2 years, he died of a heart attack, pressured again by persons, we are reliably informed, like Roosevelt's carrot, who sought power for themselves. Roosevelt's carrot is now prime minister, and we're working very closely with him. Been to my office here in Washington, been to my home. We're working on what? A diaspora policy paper, so that Dominicans at home and abroad can work together for development. So we can have a botanic society, a chemistry society, a mathematics society, a society for higher physics. As a matter of fact, in 2001, December 7th, 2001, at the Brooklyn Marriott, we had almost 1,000 Dominicans from all over the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean, and Dominica, brought together by the Rosie Douglas Foundation, created in honor of Rosie Douglas, and the newly created Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences. Who is on the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences? I'll give you some names. The president was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Clayton Shillingford, good friend of Edsel Edmonds. Why? Because he was a plant pathologist, scientist. He was the director of the South America Caribbean Division at DuPont Labs in DuPont, Delaware. Who was our speaker? Who was our speaker at that symposium? Dr. Sherman Severin, Dominican mathematician and physicist, who was involved in the development of the gallium arsenide, which was the basis for the Intel chip. The Intel chip that's in computers all over the world. A Dominican, advisor to Boeing Labs, advisor to Boeing Aircraft, advisor to Microsoft, Dominican physicist, looking to do Institute of Higher Physics so we can build bridges and other structures in Dominica that are resistant to sea blasts, because you know, Shannon, as islands, we get a lot of sea blasts.
Yep.
And if you have polymers and other non-metal framings of buildings and bridges and the other types of construction, you can avoid the sea blast eroding those structures. So those are the kinds of things we were working on with Roosevelt Skerritt. We brought him, he was there with us in New York, along with Vince Henderson, who is his colleague. Once, however, he took power, what he did was he moved away from democracy, he moved away from sustainable development, and he has built an oligarchy. So what he has in place is a system where the police service is now run under his thumb. The Public Service Commission is now run under his thumb. The Electoral Commission is now dominated by his appointees. So that is why in Dominica I say we have a dictatorship, because what has happened is the parliament does not work. The opposition has been pushed out of parliament. Parliamentarian of the opposition had a gun pulled on him by a government minister. This is where we are in Dominica. This is where we are. The procurement laws of Dominica are not respected. When we were children in Dominica, we read in the newspaper, and I quote, "Tenders are invited from suitably qualified persons for the building of a wall, the building of a school, the building of a bridge." Today, Roosevelt Skerritt has given $1 billion contract to a gentleman by the name, I can't call him a gentleman, somebody by the name of Anthony Hayden from the Middle East. We are not sure what his real name is. Maybe Mohammed Abdullah or something of that kind. No bid contract. Let me just repeat what I said. The biggest project
$1 billion,
in the history of our country.
$1 billion, $1 billion?
$1 billion for a new airport, and it is given to a company called Montreal Management, no bid. He claims it will be built by passport sales. Well, let me talk about the passport sales for a minute. In all the years that Roosevelt Skerritt has presided as Prime Minister of Dominica, he has not done one commission of inquiry into the passport sales. He appoints agents, and those agents are in Pakistan and Iran and other places further afield, and we don't know anything about income and outflow because it is not placed under the aegis of the Department of the Director of Audit. The Director of Audit in our Constitution is responsible to do what auditors do, audit government finances. And it's our position that if you're using a state asset, as in the passport of the Commonwealth of Dominica, which, by the way, has a CARICOM symbol on it, more on that later, and you're selling it to persons overseas, that those funds should come into what? The Consolidated Fund of Dominica, because it is a Dominican asset. That does not happen. We have a lawsuit filed in the state of New York by a Dominican ambassador called Paolo Zampoli. And in the lawsuit, this is a person that was appointed by the Skerritt government. He says, and I quote, "I am in need of my percentage on the hotel project called Kempinski because I'm afraid that my share will disappear."
He said what? He said what quote? Go back to the start of the code for me, please.
He's asking for his share. Imagine, this is an ambassador. This is a Dominican ambassador. I believe he's the ambassador for marine life overseas.
And he was writing to whom?
He's filing a lawsuit. In the lawsuit, he's saying, it's a lawsuit in the state of New York, that he's seeking his percentage of a deal related to the construction of the Kempinski Hotel, one of the CBI hotels, because he is afraid that his monies, that is his share, will disappear in the Dominica Bank in Switzerland, or one of the many offshore bank accounts that are maintained. This is what's happening in Dominica. When was there a bank in Switzerland called the Dominican Bank? We never heard of that. The first time we heard of that was in that lawsuit. But we know that there's estimated $4 billion that is stashed offshore that has not made its way into the consolidated fund. So
I was about to ask you to put some context for my viewers who may not be aware of Switzerland and the Swiss banking system. What is it notorious for?
Well, it's notorious for tax evasion, hidden offshore accounts, a lot of kleptocrats, dictators, and oligarchs. That's where they go, unfortunately. And we know that to be the case. And in Dominica, we see a prime minister who at election time has access to enormous funds. So we had Sam Raphael come on earlier. Sam Raphael is someone I know. He's someone who I consider a friend. But he's dead wrong in what he said. It is actually deceitful for someone like Sam to come on this station and speak to the citizens of the Caribbean and support a government which he knows as someone who grew up in the U.S. Virgin Islands and who was educated here in Washington, that Roosevelt Skerritt and his entire cabinet would have been arrested for racketeering and for corrupt acts in governance had they been in the United States, the United Kingdom, or Canada, places where Dominicans go to study, where they live, where our diaspora is located. We want for Dominicans the same rights that exist for people in the United Kingdom. We want for Dominicans the same rights that exist for Dominicans residing in Canada. We want for Dominicans the same rights existing for Dominicans living in the United States. We don't want to be hypocrites. Interestingly, what Roosevelt Skerritt has done, I guess it's his right to do that, he's had 2 children with his current wife. They're born in the United States. He did not have them born in Dominica. Why? So it's interesting, you're setting yourself above the population. You're giving yourself, during the middle of COVID, a $64,000 emolument. $64,000 in rent. He is charging to the taxpayers for his mansion, which he claims is not his own, while Dominicans were suffering the vicissitudes of COVID-19. 64,000. So he's living a lifestyle in Dominica which is increasingly impoverished, where young people cannot find jobs, where shopkeepers are struggling, where fisher folk are struggling, where agriculture has disappeared, where there's no industry but the passport selling industry. And he has made Dominica a fiefdom for his fly-by-night allies and for those persons who are passport agents, as Sam Raphael is. So when Sam Raphael comes on this program, St. Lucians and others who listen to him need to know that his hotel was not built based on personal enterprise and ingenuity. I appreciate what Mr. Raphael has done, I've said it to him, in trying to link agriculture and fisheries to his hotel. That is admirable. And I've actually said that to him, and I say this is what we need to have more of. But if you are selling a state asset, why don't you put the funds in the National Bank in a national trust? Because the monies belong to all Dominicans. And then from that trust, Brother Shannon, you can then have a loan board that will accept applications from suitably qualified persons for projects in agriculture, for products in industry, for projects rather in IT, for projects in tourism. And you do not have them submit to a political litmus test. They don't have to wear a red hat, put on a red shirt and blow a red horn and jump up and down in the sun playing the fool. That's what happens in Dominica. So Sam Raphael, who was on your show earlier, he was part of the opposition. I was not. He left the opposition and he went and joined the government, became a recipient of the CBI funds, and now he's talking a different tune, and he comes on this station and is in support of an election which should not take place. Why?
Let me just hold on for me, Mr. Gabriel. Very interested in discussion, and we still have some time. But let me just protect the integrity of this platform. Mr. Samuel Etienne, the hotelier over in Dominica, we do not have the evidence to state that his hotel was not acquired through his personal successes, nor do we have the receipts that he is in receipt of Dominica citizenship by investment funds. I just wanted to place that on record there.
I understand. I accept that. I just want to let you know that Mr. Raphael has publicly acknowledged that he is part of the CBI program. So this is not something that is hidden. It's something that's open and notorious.
He's part of it, Mr. Gabriel. Doesn't suggest, though, that he has been in receipt of CBI funds.
I see. So you're saying that he may be part of the CBI program, but has not received CBI funds.
I'm just saying, Mr. Gabriel, to protect us here.
I understand. I understand. I tell you what you do. I tell you what you can do. You can tell him I said that. And if I am wrong, I'd be happy to apologize to him. But I do believe that his hotel has been in receipt.
And you would also be happy. You would also be happy to protect us. Should he be pursuing any legal recourse here? I'm just protecting us. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I would not come on your program if I did not believe Mr. Raphael was deeply involved and has an interest that is beyond simply that of being a protector of our democracy. You see, I'm here not because I'm a member of opposition. Mm-hmm. I've been paid. I'm here because I love Dominica. Yeah. We return to Dominica, and we want all Dominicans, no matter what party they belong to feel free. Right now, if you're not a supporter of the ruling oligarchy, you are not free. You're not free to enterprise. You're not free to even work at a hospital. We have 3 doctors I know of. There are more. Dr. Sam Christian, Dr. Irving Pascal, the director of trauma at Harrisburg Hospital in Pennsylvania, cannot practice at our hospital because they have been critical of the government. As a matter of fact, as we speak, Dominicans know this, and St. Lucians need to know this. Almost the entire upper echelon of the opposition is under criminal charges under the Roosevelt Skerritt regime. Lennox Linton, the gentleman you just had on, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, he was arrested. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, for walking.
Did he tell you he was arrested?
I'm aware that he was arrested for walking in the streets.
For incitement to violence to overthrow the government of Dominica. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
St. Lucia's aware of that fact? It's a fact. So what they do, what Skerritt has done, is he uses the director of public prosecution as a battering ram, as a blunt instrument, as a cudgel to batter the opposition. So if you criticize the government, you're charged with some bogus charge. Sam Christian was charged with incitement to burn parliament. Fontaine, incitement to commit acts of violence. Same thing with Lennox Linton and many others. As a matter of fact, the current Speaker of Parliament, when he was in the opposition, was charged with the same thing. Once he moved across to the government and became Speaker of the House of Assembly, those charges were, I believe, placed on the inactive docket or just basically suspended to the degree that he's not facing them anymore. So we see the manipulation of the judiciary. We see the manipulation of the public service. So we have public servants, that is permanent secretaries, going around in the color of the ruling party, red. You know, in our system, the public service is supposed to be apart from partisan politics. In our system, the police service is supposed to be apart from partisan politics. We now have a police service where an inspector not too long ago would routinely go on radio in support of the government, where the Auditor General, Director of Audit, would routinely go on radio in support of the government, immersing themselves in partisan politics. And now you have an election call where you've had no electoral reform, where the Organization of American States has said there should be electoral reform, where the Commonwealth of Nations has said there ought to be electoral reform, where the Organization of American States has said there ought to be electoral reform, where Anthony Astafan, the attorney for Roosevelt Skerritt, has said to the Caribbean Court of Justice that yes, the government is moving in that direction. The government then hires Sir Dennis Byron, who was the former president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, to do exactly that almost 2 years ago. He delays. On the same day, November 6, 2022, that he issues a letter saying he has completed phase 1. That evening, Roosevelt Skerritt, interestingly enough, look at the convergence, declares that he's calling a snap election. How interesting. And now, you know, Shannon, all of the paraphernalia was prepared, the screens, the candidates. So, you know, that was not something that was done at the flip of a switch or the spur of the moment. That took a certain amount of deliberate effort and planning. So we have here a Chief Justice or former Chief Justice who needs to clear his name.
So are you suggesting that the learned gentleman, Sir Dennis Barron, perhaps may have been in collusion with your Prime Minister pre the 6th of December? I'm not even suggesting
that. I'm saying look at the facts. Look at the incontrovertible facts. Look at the timing. Look at the synchronicity. So whether or not he was in collusion, we just have a grave concern that for 2 years almost, he was in the process of something that ought to have been rather pedestrian, in the sense that the OAS had already spoken. CARICOM had already spoken. The Commonwealth had already spoken. He was not doing something akin to space exploration or trying to find the perpetual motion engine. You know, he was doing something that had to do with what? Electoral ID cards. Cleansing the voters list. It's almost the role of electors, Brother Shannon, on Dominica is almost as the same numerical standing as the population of the country. How can that be? That is utter madness. You cannot have a voters list that's about the size of the general population, but that's what it is. And also the practice that Skerritt had engaged, using monies obviously gotten illicitly, to bring in Dominicans from overseas to vote. Plane loads of Dominicans, something that had never happened before. So when Raphael comes in this program and talks about, other governments had won, there's never been a government in Dominica like that of Roosevelt Skerritt that has broken the law. And he said it. Roosevelt Skerritt, and I quote, said, no law, Brother Shan, no constitution can prevent me from doing what I want to do with regard to running for an election. And that was said in the context of an allegation that he was a French citizen. And as a French citizen, several elections ago, he would have been ineligible to stand for office. It was discovered after the case, when he was prevented, or he was not compelled to bring his passport into evidence, that he had written to the French asking to give off his citizenship. And so we have someone who has been time and time again caught in lies, saying things that are not true, and in particular the following. CARICOM needs to stand up. CARICOM needs to understand that as West Indians, we were once federated. That didn't work, Jamaica pulled out, but we still work as University of West Indies, we still have the West Indies team, we still have the Caribbean community headquartered in Guyana. So it's no good for a Barbadian ambassador at a program in Washington where I'm speaking about democracy to walk away and say, I do not know what Christian is saying is true. I'm not here for this. We're here for each other. If something happens in St. Lucia, it happens to me. If something happens in Guyana or Trinidad or Jamaica, we live here in the Washington, D.C. area as one Caribbean family. And that is how I know your ambassador. We work together. If there's a storm, if there's a need, we reach out and touch, and we put our monies where our mouths are as Caribbean nationalists. So we have to look out for each other. What has happened under Roosevelt Skerritt is that he has hired a rogues gallery of ambassadors. Each of those ambassadors, Shannon, their names were never placed in the Gazette. In the tradition we grew up with in Dominica, like on St. Lucia and the other British Islands, when an appointment is made in the public service, Shannon, where's that announcement made? In what document? What is it called?
In the Gazette.
You go to the head of the class. Amen, amen, amen. It goes in the Gazette. So who do we have here? The Nigerian former Minister of Oil, Alison Madueke, arrested in England by Scotland Yard. When they arrest her, Ashana, what do they discover? She's a Dominican diplomat, ambassador extraordinary plenipotentiary of the Commonwealth of Dominica. Her name never appeared in the Gazette. It never came up in Parliament. It was never made known to the Dominican people. We only knew she was a Dominican diplomat after she was arrested. It gets worse. The Iranian master spy and sanctions buster, Ali Riza Monferrer, arrested in the Dominican Republic.
All Dominican ambassadors. Mr. Gabriel, what you painted for us here is a picture, according to you, of a dictatorship over in Dominica. And you've also walked us down corridor after corridor of corrupt practices. Why hasn't all of this been flagged on the international agenda? Why are the international bodies not coming down on the government of Roosevelt Skerritt?
That's a very interesting question. I want to remind you that the Caribbean Court of Justice, at the recent case that was heard, said in dicta, that is, it was not in the order, but it was in dicta, where they basically recommended that no other election,
Should be
and I
held.
quote, ought to be held on Dominican where these taints exist. Okay, the OAS has spoken, so it's not true that the international community has not spoken. CARICOM has asked for the electoral reform, so it's not quite true that the Caribbean community has not spoken. The British Commonwealth of Nations has spoken, so it's not quite true that the international community has not spoken. What we do, however, see is a continued sort of coddling of Roosevelt's carrot, to the degree that the civil rights of Dominicans continue to be diminished, the economic opportunities of Dominicans continue to be obliterated, and the democracy we know, or we once had on Dominica, is destroyed. What we are saying is, for this election, this sham election, we're asking for all international organizations and CARICOM nations and our traditional allies to not respect the result, because the result is taking place in the context of an oppressive and fraudulent structure where state power is being used to dominate the press. State resources are being used to bribe electors. The Prime Minister went on a platform within the week and said, when he was arguing against a person who's a coconut vendor, you know, we call coconuts jelly. Jellyman is his name. He sells coconuts. What can Jellyman do for you? Can Jellyman give you a house? Or can Jellyman build you a house? What is he saying? In his utterance on the platform, he's essentially speaking to the culture of bribes, because under our laws, you're not allowed to bribe or treat. I can't say to you, Shannon, vote for me, I'm going to give you a house. Or I can't say, look, this guy Gabe Christian, he can't give you a house, he can't even buy you a drink. I mean, this is the things that Skerritt's saying on platforms. I mean, he's lost it to this, in the sense that he's lost all decorum, he's lost all shame. He's saying, you want these guys, you know, meaning the opposition, they can't even buy you a drink. Of course he can buy a lot of drinks. He can buy the entire drink factory because he has all the access to the CBI money.
Just hold on for me, Mr. Gabriel. I'm always interested to hear from you. I have a call. I suspect it's from 767 Dominica. Good morning. Welcome to the platform.
Yes, good morning to you. Good morning, Dominica. Mr. Gabriel Christian is on the radio, on the television, making some kind of allegations, and I think I'm hearing one-sided thing. I just need to make some clarification. You know, he's giving the impression that in Dominica is a lawless state. For instance, he's trying to blame the government for somebody who goes out and support the government and call the radio station. And he's making it look like it is the government that's doing that. I know for a fact that persons who go and who are public servants, the government write to them. You understand? The government write to them to take the action. But you do know that there's a claim of right to free speech even if you're a public servant. So if a public servant
Mr. Shannon?
Yes, I can.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
So if a public servant decides to go on the radio and make a statement, if you think it is against the rule of the public service, you can blame the government and say it is the government. The person is expressing their right. And if the government thinks that the person is wrong, they have right to take disciplinary action against them. And that would depend on whether or not the person is breaching the rule, or if they are breaching the rule, whether or not they are within the constitutional right to express themselves. So to make it look like somebody going on the radio and making a statement, to make it to blame the government, and the other things I'm hearing them saying over and over again, one-sidedly, by the way, I must say, I think the problem we have in Dominica is an opposition that is very, very weak, and they are stressing on electoral reform as a red herring. They're flogging a dead horse. The electoral reform, yes, we need to improve our system. Like everything that you have to do, you have to modernize it. The opposition got lost and they got beaten every election because they are not doing their work. They are not a party that is loved by the people. When they first came into government, they only had 33% of the vote. They never got more than 42% of the vote. So the supporters and the electorate in Dominica do not support the Workers' Party.
So
go to the poll.
Let me ask you, caller, just a quick question. And our coverage this morning has not been one-sided. We had hotelier, what's his name, Mr. Samuel.
I'm not sure, right? But there was some problem. He was not as clear.
So I'm just saying the coverage has never been one-sided here. But let me ask you quickly, caller. Based on the fact that the CCJ has said that there should not be another election in Dominica without the reforms, how do you feel as a Dominican citizen, knowing that perhaps there's a voters list with 5,000 plus citizens who are no longer alive? How do you feel knowing that you're going back to the poll in that reality again?
Well, first of all, the CCJ said with the state, because what the CCJ was referring to, they are very serious allegations which were not proven. So the CCJ would like us to clarify that, but it did not say we are not going to an election without electoral reform. Electoral reform is on. I mean, the report from Dennis Byron is already in a draft form. Electoral reform is not a thing that happens in one day. It is an ongoing process. And the fact that you call election, the framework is already there for electoral reform. The problem with the opposition, the Prime Minister called the election. He was within his right, within the Constitution. They started saying that it was illegal. Then they say, now that they know it is legal, they say it is immoral. Now they're calling on the president to stop the election. The opposition keeps fighting, losing battles, because they are making a case that they cannot prove in law. They're making a case that they cannot get the public to support them.
Let's focus on what we can prove, caller. After the 2019 election, your Prime Minister promised that he would reform the process.
He promised that he was going to start it and he would do it within 100 days. Yes, he did that.
He's going back to the polls, not keeping that promise to you.
Well, I mean, politicians make promise and they do not always keep all their promises, because you know that when he did that, we did not have
we didn't have COVID.
We don't have COVID, we don't have whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, Mr. Byron took some time to produce the report. So the Prime Minister doesn't necessarily have to bind himself after 2 years to what he had promised to do in 100 days. Mm-hmm. And the election is within a month, because he declared the election on the 6th. Election is a month after. Yeah. Any government that takes over have a template to continue the process of electoral reform. Don't make it look like electoral reform is something that is there to change the government. Electoral reform is something that is there to improve and modernize the system.
And perhaps balance off the playing field.
Well, you will never get a balanced playing field, because I'll tell you why. All of us go to school together. We are some of us having all the opportunities, and some people do better than others. So the party that can generate more resources, even in America, where they try to have campaign reform, that some people get away to do better under the same system. So we have a system. When you put electoral reform, there'll be rules and regulations, but it's just a matter of shared talent and capability. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If the opposition is telling me at that stage they're making wrong decisions, in this case, like in this election, they decided to boycott the election. Let us see how much capital that decision is going to bring to them going forward, because they are maybe hoping that they would bring some attention to the international public, and that would cause them to pressure on Dominica, and maybe the government will fall. But if they cannot make a case to Dominicans, how can they make a case to the international community? You see what the Prime Minister did some Saturdays ago. Yesterday, the opposition was trying to have a match. They could not muster 50 people in Roseau to show their support. When the Prime Minister called his demonstration, the whole entire city of Roseau was filled with thousands of people. So the question about electoral reform is just something that a weak opposition is clinging on to. And they need to go out in the field, go and meet the electorate, speak to them, and stop being a party that is trying only to look for power and not looking about the people. If they were looking about the people, people would be attracted to them. People are not getting attracted. I am on the ground, even in constituencies where, as somebody said earlier, that they think that the government was losing ground because of certain candidates. We can now see that in this committee, bringing a new candidate, the candidate is going to perform better than how the candidate before performed.
It's a wait and see, and we'll keep our eyes focused. But caller, quickly before I let you go, what part of Dominica are you calling us from?
Well, I'm calling from Jimmy, but I'm talking about the constituency of St. Joseph, a very interesting constituency.
St. Joseph. A very interesting contribution from yourself this morning. I want to thank you for calling, and we'll continue to focus on what's happening over in Dominica.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me have my seat.
You're most welcome, sir. Always a pleasure hearing from our viewers and brothers and sisters over in the nature isle of Dominica and across the Caribbean. Last time we were focused on Dominica, I forgot to say good morning to... I said good morning to Uncle Ford, or I didn't say Uncle Albert. Good morning and a happy Thursday to everyone over in the nature isle of Dominica. Interesting times. We're going to conclude now. We'll have to bring back attorney at law Gabriel Christian, who logged off